This is the start of a weekly reading vlog in the new place. I have lots of reading goals, lots of them, and I'm starting tutoring and TAing, so who knows, but we got some reading goals. I've already started Stories of Your Life and Others by Chiang. I've read the first 3 stories. So of the first 3, my favorite one is, I think it's called Division by Zero. Yeah, this one really spoke to my math background soul. So this is a story about a mathematician who loves the beauty of math. If you've ever had a mathematician friend, they don't care if there's a purpose for their math, they care about how it makes sense and the logic and beauty behind it. And that's the science, or the mathematician we have in this story, and it's about how they discover something that turns their world on their head, and it's very interesting. And it's kind of almost written like a proof. If you don't know what a proof is, that's just in math, you say that this assumption in math is true because of this proof, sort of thing. They're very weird. I'm not very good at proofs. I am a physicist, not a mathematician, for that reason. And the other stories, one of them reminded me of Flowers for Algernon, except not as sad. That one's called Understand, or else maybe it is as sad. I don't know, it was about this person who basically was comatose, was given a hormone, and suddenly became smarter and smarter, which we've had in other sci-fi medium like Limitless. Like, the idea itself wasn't unique, but where it went, I'm still thinking about it, and I think it was a little over my head, but I think that's also the point, because it's about these thoughts of someone who is like echelons above even like a genius. So I need to like think about that one a bit more. And then the first one was Tower of Babylon, and this reminded me of Omphalos a little bit in his last collection. Both of these stories kind of approach religion through a sci-fi lens in a way. So this was about the creation of the Babylon Tower and what cities kind of existed in it and what its implications were, kind of like a parallel alternate history sort of thing. It was really interesting. So I'm really liking this collection so far. The next one is the one for Arrival, so I'm reading that tomorrow. I'm reading like a story a day. In the Kindle, I've been rereading Words of Radiance. I don't know how far I am in it. I finished part 1, and I'm now in the interludes. Oh, I love the interludes. The interludes are so fun. It's how you get these different views of the world, and in this book, so like I've said about the Stormlight Archives, so far these books are kind of about magic re-entering this world in preparation for a big conflict that's going to happen. And before this big conflict, there's war, and there are characters just getting through life and having to deal with magic entering their life in addition to their own personal traumas. And when you get to hop around in the interludes, you get to see other people kind of getting powers, so like different orders that we don't normally see. So in this world, there's going to be like 10 types of powers, I think. And so you get to see like little snippets. But then like sad things also happen. They're like really cool little short stories that I get very invested in. So yeah, and this is Shalon's book, like I said in the last vlog, and I love her like a lot. Although I like the trader more. I can't remember how to say her name. It's Ryson or something. She's a Thalian or something like that. Which means they have really cool eyebrows. That's like my big takeaway from that race of people. And she's a trader trying to become a trade master, and I know she comes up, she's been in the first book's interludes, and then she's in this book's interludes, and I think she plays a bigger role in Oathbringer if my memory serves. And I really hope she becomes like a bigger character, because I really like her, and I really like how she keeps having to combat her prejudices with the world every time, because she's trading with her mentor, and every time she thinks one way, she gets proven another, and it's another way. We get to see different parts of the world, and yeah. It's such a compulsive read for me. It's one of my favorite books of all time, if not my favorite book ever. So I'm already, now that I've gotten to read again, like 200 pages in, and it's been great. And I haven't started it yet, but I need to read for sure The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, because book club is in a week and I haven't read it yet. But it's like only 200 pages, so I should be able to get to this. I don't know what it's about other than it's historical fiction based off hellish reform school in Jim Crow era Florida. So it's going to be uplifting. So they're the reading plans, and I will check in as I have more thoughts.
As promised, we are doing the apartment tour. This is our beautiful new kitchen. I really love the kitchen. Demolished brownie tin over here. I ate all of these brownies.
This is a good start to the tour. Show them our dirty dishes.
These brownies were important. I had one. We were really proud of these spice racks. We put these up ourselves in front of our toaster stove.
One thing I really like about where we are is that we're behind a Berkeley building that is just graffitied as all heck, and it just looks cool. Yeah. So I actually really like seeing this in the kitchen.
Yeah. So that's the kitchen spice rack that we put up ourselves because adults. Our kitchen, we don't have enough drawers, so we just have a silverware box because there were 2 drawers and they are not big enough.
Yeah.
This is our living room, still a work in progress, but we got, a great floral couch.
Yeah.
We like this red couch, TV, lots of memes everywhere. I live with 2 boys now. They have interesting decor decisions. Although I will say this Space Jam clock's pretty great. So I'm excited for that. Alright, this is their tapestry thing that they've had forever. We have really long, windy hallways that just never end. And now this is the spare room. So this is where my couch for my last place is. That's my desk area. Board games. More board games. My TV. It's kind of like my office / a guest room. Chipotle I had earlier. This is, very clean. We don't let the bathroom doors open because cats are a menace. You don't get to go in here because this is the roommate's room and we're not rude. This is our bedroom. Is the cat on the bed anymore? No, but this is the bed. This is the rest of the room that's in chaos because we're waiting for furniture. And then the bookshelves. I guess I should show you the bookshelves better. Oh, but cat. Here's a cat. Hey, Poochow. Good talk. Good talk. So, my bookshelves. We got my classic Sanderson collection. And the next shelf has some more favorites. We'll skip the bottom shelf. These are like random books. And then these are more of like my classics and my mass market paperbacks. And then some more fantasy up here. I finally last week bought the paperback of The Burning White. So now I have the whole collection in paperback. But it's pretty insane. But yep. And here's Ryan. So that's the apartment tour.
Realized I've been super bad at checking in, although I've been reading a lot. I did film a little mini apartment tour that you will probably see in this vlog. Ryan helped a little, or he was there, and you'll see the cats. But I have read a lot. So first, I didn't talk about it in the previous clip, and I'm pretty sure I hadn't finished it in the last vlog, but I have finished it's called A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. These title names, man, they're really hard for me. But I don't know if I've talked about it a lot in the vlogs, but this book is tonally very different from the first book for me. It's definitely more sci-fi, and it's more about the human condition overall and less about an individual's relationship with the world. And when I say that, I mean more in like the internet space and its relationship to technology and the economy. The first book, you really just get April May's perspective and how her life changes because of the Carls. So if you haven't heard of these books, the Carls just show up one day. April May happens to be the person who films a video for them. It goes viral, so she's basically the ambassador for the Carls. So the first book, you spend a lot of time figuring out what the Carls are, sort of, but mostly what happens to April May with the internet. And in the second book, we spend more time with the whole sci-fi portion of it, more about learning about the Carls, more learning about the state of the world. And the world is near future, so very close to ours, economic collapse, climate change, lots of polarizing political sides. And it's about, this team of people trying to figure that out and put it all together and where that goes. And although these are very different books tonally, like I was compulsively reading them for little different reasons, although I feel Hank Green is really good at like making a book kind of addictive. But like for the first one, I think I liked more than the second one, but I still really liked the second one. It was just very different. And I think also I really liked the ending of the first one, I think, but I didn't really like the ending of the second one. The ending of the second one, I don't know, it kind of just happened for me. Like, it definitely doesn't just end, but I wasn't blown away by the ending. So that's my takeaway. I haven't decided if I'll talk more about this series. It's a really cool duology. I highly recommend the audiobooks. The audiobook also has like a bonus podcast where Hank Green and a different creator talk about what it's like to be a content creator, the internet, how like we have these different monopolies and how we're like citizens of these corporations to a certain extent, which is kind of brought up in different analogies and metaphors in this second book. So yeah, it was a great read. And so because I finished that audiobook, I have been reading / listening to the audiobook of The Nickel Boys just because time. And also my brain was just like really slow. Like I've been really only been able to really physically reread because it's just like easy. Yeah, I knew this book would be sad. I knew it would. There was no part of me that should have expected it to not be sad. Like, I'm not finished with it, so who knows, maybe. I mean, I also know where the main character ends up because we kind of start in the present and go to the past. It's that type of setup. But our main character, or one of the main perspectives we get, is Elmond, I believe his name is, Elwood. And he is such a student who tries to do the right thing. He's trying to do the right thing. As a black person in America, he's trying to stay out of trouble, get a job, go to college, not mess with anyone. He kind of sort of like wants to be involved with the protests because this is the 60s, so civil rights movement is up. And because of situations, like he teases you, he gives you these moments where you get to know this person, and this person has these dreams and they work so hard for these dreams, and you're just like, I know they're not going to achieve this because I know that they end up at this school, and you don't end up at this school if you're going to college. That's just not what happens. So that happened. I find it a very good story, and it's very well written. It's something that engages me. It's just like a lot of stories about racial oppression, sad and frustrating and, you know, unfortunately unsurprising. It's just, yeah. But I'm interested to see what we end up discussing for book club. I don't know. I'm hoping it's not just a whole bunch of, I can't believe this happened. I'm like, because I'm personally kind of done with that. You have the internet, people are yelling about things. These things, of course, they've been happening. Like, get your head out of the sand. Especially these people who I have book club with, they're in like their 50s and 60s. So they know. 50 years ago, it was like the 70s. Like, they know. But hopefully it's a more productive conversation and discussion. I've also read 2 more short stories in this with what brain power I had. So I read the one that did Arrival. So I've decided, like I've said in other videos, I'm the type of person who likes when adaptations and like the source material or vice versa really complement each other. Like they're not just like, I don't like anymore when an adaptation is just a visual copy of a book or a comic or whatever, because then it's a little repetitive, and like, sure, it's really nice to see it, but I want them to take that chance to stay true maybe to the source, but expand artistically with the characters or the plot or the setting. I don't know. I give them more license there, and I feel like that happened really well here. I don't know if I could tell you which one I like better. They made some changes for the movie that made sense. There was one change they made that I thought was really interesting. I'll put a spoiler tag here for a bit because it's a spoiler for the movie and the story. It should only be for like 30 seconds, but in the movie, the daughter dies from a medical condition. And in the book, the daughter dies from falling off of rocks. And I think that's really interesting because in the movie, the mother makes the choice to still have the child knowing that this is happening, that there's going to be this uncontrollable medical thing. But in the book, you know, you could just forbid your child from ever rock climbing, you know, like the fact, like I think that's just it's a different framing of that loss, you know. I really like that you get more of the flashbacks with the daughter, I feel, in the book, and so the physics didn't really get to be talked about in the movie, and I totally get it because you need to make it digestible, so keeping it more with the language is more accessible. But the physics was so freaking cool. Like, It was so cool. I love it so much. I need to dive into it a bit more because like I was so happy. I was just like, oh, this is even better. You've just added to this thing. I think Ted Chiang and I both appreciate things in math and physics like similarly. So he'll like hold on to something like, oh, that's one of the reasons I love this part of the world, and you're just making a cool story with characters I can latch onto. And so I think that's why a lot of his stories work for me. And he's just such a thoughtful author. Like, I've been thinking this is like what Asimov and other authors in the past have done, but with characters I can latch onto better. You know, so it's like the conversations characters are having are real conversations, and versus like when I read an Asimov book, I'm like, no one talks like this, at least not anymore. If people did, like, I don't know, just there's a lot of, I just don't think people talk to each other in a deductive style out loud. And then the next story is 72 Letters. And this is one that been reading this kind of, not really a buddy read, but there's been a bunch of us reading these stories around the same time and like kind of being like, this one's my favorite or least favorite, or has anyone else had issues with this story, you know, kind of casual. And 72 Letters is one that's been giving people more problems than not, more than likely is some people's least favorite or in that bottom echelon. I don't know where it'll fall for me. A lot's being tried to do in that one, and I think my need to want to unpack it all makes me like it more. It's really interesting. You have I don't know, it's really hard to even describe. Well, the 72 letters is that you can make an object and then you basically give it a name that is 72 letters, I think Hebrew letters, and then it tells it its command structure and what its purpose is. And there's this real tie between naming and God. And then there's also this thing where instead of reproducing as we know we do now with sperm and egg, for a long time we thought, we didn't know how reproduction worked. And so there's this different form of reproduction in this book that's explored in, I think, a really interesting way. And then there's economic talk, and there's a lot. So what I think should have happened with this novella, or novelette, I don't know, it was pretty long, is it should be maybe a bit more expanded, because I do think it tries to bite off more than it can chew. But it was really interesting. Like, I read it throughout the day when I had, like, an ability to think. And you definitely have to want to think, because it's not as easy as I feel other Ted Chiang stories are. But yeah, I have a few more of those left. Still continuing Words of Radiance. You know how you know a story. You know what's going to happen. And you still hope for once it does the other thing. Like, maybe since I last read it, they rewrote that whole chapter and it's going to do something else. Right? But no, yeah, that happens to me a lot. But characters are coming together. And seriously, Sanderson's the only author where, like, I can read 400 pages of the book and I'm not even 40% of the way done. Like, Jesus. But I'm having a good time with that. So those are the things that I'm reading. And hopefully I'll finish up some of them. I feel like I'll finish The Nickel Boys very soon. I don't have much with that in either physical reading space or audiobook. And, you know, this one's pretty close to the end. Words of Radiance is probably going to be an ongoing project. And I will check in a bit. I figured I should bring in Putao for the last part of this, although you probably saw him on the little tour clip that I think should be in here if all else doesn't fail when I edit. And I have finished the books I wanted to finish for the week. Well, I say finish. We'll start with Words of Radiance. I did not finish this, but I did not expect to because it's long. So, but I am making a good way through it. I'm on page 400 something, so I guess not halfway, but I'm having a great time. Yeah, things are happening on the Shattered Plains that is very interesting. I just find that this book is way more satisfying in many ways than Way of Kings. Like, I like Way of Kings. That book has to exist. I can't see it not existing in its current form. Like, you need that setup. You need this really good setup book. But man, I feel like there's so much payoff in Words of Radiance. Like, I'm getting to know new things left and right. And it's not like you learn everything. Gosh, like, having read this book and Oathbringer, I still don't know a lot. So, yeah. But enjoying that. I finished Stories of Your Life and Others. I think I only had 3 more stories left to tell you guys about. One was The Evolution of Human Science, which was very short. And as I was reading it, I'm like, this sounds like one of those, like, artist pieces that would be in, like, Nature or Science. These are scientific journals, the big ones that kind of cover multiple categories of science, and then you get more specialized journals when you're like doing little bits. If anyone is ever curious about scientific journals and how they work, I'm glad to tell you. It's an interesting world. And he did actually write that for Nature. It was interesting. It was about the idea of what's the purpose of science with humans if there are like super metahumans. It wasn't like my favorite thing in here, but it was pretty good. And then we have Hell is the Absence of God. This was interesting. This is a story where angels are real, and when they come, they can enact miracles like in the Bible, but they also are these big bringers of natural disasters, so people will also always get hurt or maybe die. There is a heaven and hell, and you're following a character. His name is, I think, Neil, and you're following his experience with his relationship to God because of the events from the angel and his attempts to affect his faith purposefully. I feel like a lot of us, everyone has a different level of faith with the universe depending on our upbringing, our situation in life, just how much faith we have. And I found like a lot of that nuance was discussed pretty well in that story. You can definitely tell that Ted Chiang thinks a lot about religion in, I feel, constructive ways. Like I feel like he's an atheist. I think probably grew up with religion based off these stories, but even if he wasn't, he definitely doesn't approach religion from I'm better than you because I'm an atheist. Like, he's not one of those. He definitely comes at it from, I don't know, just like a very thoughtful place. That said, I'm not extremely religious. I'm not like, I don't have a horse in this race, really. It's just interesting how much in this story collection he's talked about God. In the previous one I read, Exhalation, it was only one story. And in the last one is, I think this one was maybe one of my favorites in the collection, and so were a bunch of my friends, and that was Liking What You See, a documentary. Okay, so what if, well, it talks about, whoop, you want down yet? Whoop, cat. There you go. It talks about lookism. What is lookism? I never thought about it this way, but it's definitely the idea that if you are conventionally attractive, you have a leg up. This is obvious. If you are pretty, it's easier to get dates, so if your goals are romantic, that's usually much easier. You're more likely to do well at job interviews. People treat you differently when you look conventionally good. That is, yeah. But this goes into it saying, now what if there was this implant you can put in your brain to make it so that you still saw people, you still could do facial recognition, you still saw beauty in the world, you still formed meaningful relationships, but you didn't actually know who was pretty or ugly. That just wasn't a part of the process of consuming an image of a person. It was really interesting. And you've got this, the story was done structurally from many interviews, so you had someone who's had this probe, you have this college campus who's like trying to make everyone have it, you have the cosmetology like lobbyist having their piece. It was a really cool story. I'm excited to think about it more. So I finished it, and per usual, when I read short story collections, I try to find like the theme that I like. And I think for this one, it seems like perception is a big thing. Like, there seems to be in most of these stories a change in perception for characters in almost every single one. And so that seems to be my biggest takeaway. This was really interesting. I think overall I liked Exhalation more. I think that was, for me, a stronger collection. But this had some real big winners, and I really enjoyed reading it. Yeah, I'm just super excited to read more of Ted Chiang's work whenever I get them. But then I've also finished The Nickel Boys. Okay, I can't talk about a lot of the things I want to say about the ending. But I will say you need to pick this book up. It's really good. What can I say that I haven't already said previously in this vlog? This was a weird book for me in my reading experience because I read a third of it physically and I listened to two-thirds of it in audio. And I liked both. I think for me the prose lended itself to audio better. Just because of some of the details and the sentence structures. It was easier for my audio receptors to take it in than my visual for some reason. I don't know, man. It's just, I really like the ending. I really like it. We have book club tonight, so I'm excited to see how that goes down. This cover is really interesting after you finish the book. And that's what I'll say there. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything. It's just like, whoa. It's still like, I also don't want you to think that the ending necessarily means this book somehow becomes happy, because this is not the racial struggle story that like makes you feel good at the end. This is the racial struggle story that's like, yeah, we have as a society been complicit or caused harm in a lot of people, and they still have to live with that trauma. And that's, yeah, but it's really good. He also references in his acknowledgments a lot of good primary sources to look into, so I might take a gander at that before book club tonight, because he took a lot of quotes and perspectives from that. So that was this week's vlog. I read the 2 things I wanted to, continued Words of Radiance. Next week I have a buddy read with Laura, so that's exciting. So probably just that, Words of Radiance, and maybe Binti. Would like to read Binti, because I've noticed as I was making my list of books I've read this month, I've been very male heavy. So I need to get a female author in here. So I'll do that for maybe Space Opera September. And videos. So you just saw my Jurassic Park video on Monday, right? I freaking love this thumbnail. Like, I'm very proud of it. And on Friday there's going to be my standalone fantasy recommendations video, and then potentially a tag video or my series TBR check-in on Monday. I have filled the fall tag, but I might redo it because I'm still messing with my lighting in the other room, and I'm a perfectionist for some things. I don't know. If I can notice something's weird, I have to fix it. But that's it for this one. Yeah, otherwise, let me know how your week's doing. It's everyone's getting back to school, right? And it's a weird world, so if you want to vent about anything or just say a highlight of your week, I'd love to hear it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.